Right, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. Can you all hear me okay? Brilliant. Let's start then. Right, 2017, what is going on? August 2016, shadow brokers claim to have stolen cyber weapons. Over 8 months, they leaked exploits. April 14th, 2017, they leaked Microsoft exploits, MS-17 as much impact as MS-8 067 had. Here you go, here's MS-17 in action. Allows you to get a shell off a device very easily. And the criminals. Never in my lifetime, I don't think I've seen national newspapers, every single one on the front page, talk about the impact. We're at war. So, who am I? My name's Neil Lines. I'm involved in a range of security areas. Social engineering is my favourite, and I work for Netitude. Case 1. May 2016, US looks set to elect their first ever female president. June 2016, it was reported that networks of Democratic National Committee, DNC, had been compromised. No proof of Russian government involvement is suspected, but the world suspects Russia-based hackers known as AP28 were responsible for it. A month later, thousands of stolen emails and attachments were published on WikiLeaks. The attack was carried out using phishing emails sent to political figures. A lot of my facts and figures come from national newspapers. I'm very interested in the media and how they sort of see things, by the way. This is what was used by APT28, or it's what they use. It is a fake Google phishing email that's sent out to, well, it's credential harvester. It's used to steal people's credentials remotely. Following, it was reported that the DNC replaced its computer systems, laptops, and phones. The head of the DNC resigned. Okay, think how many people they've got working for him. I read that and I thought, they're going to have thousands of people working for him. Did they really replace all the phones, all the computers, all the servers? If they did, that shows real fear what happened following that attack. History may consider this hack responsible for losing an election. Emails are now mightier than the sword. Right, we're going to look at nation-state threats today. I'm very interested in what is a nation-state threat, how sophisticated are they replicatable, are they what we call cutting edge and very interesting. So when you think of nation-states, these are your typical people we might think of: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. What was interesting was recently WikiLeaks published something that said that the CIA, who we don't think of normally, went to great lengths to basically disguise its own hacking as Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. So the waters are slightly muddled. We don't quite know when these attacks happen, who's really doing them. We'll never know. This is something interesting that I've read in the media. North Korea, theoretically or apparently, has 7,700 employed full-time penetration testers or hackers, call them what you like. I think that's interesting because a lot of people think of North Korea and they think of very sort of limited IT capabilities. Well, if they've got 7,700 of them working in their so-called cyber army, that's a pretty big force. This is something that I like, and I've had this on other talks I've done. I like this slide. You'll never be able to prevent all of them. Everything is penetratable eventually. I think that's right. I think all you can do is you can slow them down. You can help defend against it. If someone wants to get in, as we all know, they will eventually. So, what are the targets? Governments. Now, I've added recently politicians. This isn't an area I had thought about, but as we all know, it is an area that's being looked at all the time. Medical companies, they're interested in records, sensitive information, information that you could discredit people with, information you could bribe people with. Manufacturing, retail, energy companies, very interested in banking as well. Here's an example from the media. AP28, or Fancy Bear, as they're known, are back at it again. They don't stop. A hacking group linked to Russia's military has begun taking aim at France's presidential candidate. This is interesting. If you look at March the 15th, 2017, IP addresses that are associated to them have been seen registering domains, French domains. They're theoretically targeting another electoral campaign. Right, so quick rundown on others. And this was sort of last year and this year. Ukraine power supply was hit. Yahoo data breaches. The DNC, as we know, were hacked. And that's a lot of money from Bangladeshi bank was taken. These are the sort of things that theoretical nation states are up to. Okay, this is something that interests me. It was another statement on a TV program I saw. To date, no single act of cybercrime has been regarded as an act of war. I think that's interesting when you look at sort of the targets that they're attacking and what they're doing and theoretically what's going on. But apparently there has been no act of war. Okay, so think nation-state threats. What do you think? I'll throw this out to the audience. I can't quite see it because of all the lights. But does anyone want to say what they think when they think nation-state? Go for it.
Anything that's going to disrupt the banking, the economy, your general infrastructure, the ability of the government to respond.
Brilliant. It's just literally cause massive disruption to governments and theoretically undermine a government. Anyone else got any theories on nation-state? What do you think? Well, I think what the media portray often is the pros, the best of the best, the elite, top level of hacking, the people what you pen testers want to aspire to be like. That's what they kind of generally give you the impression of when you think of nation states. There you go, very costly, massive global attacks, highly sophisticated, the pros. The thing was, if you look at what they're actually doing, they're hacking people a lot of the time using credential harvesters, and that's quite low down the spectrum. So it got me thinking, and I know I've spoken on this sort of theory before at conferences, but it's something that interests me. I'm going to keep talking about it. Can a single person accomplish this? Are they sophisticated, and what would the costs be? Right, so we're going to look at some demos now, remote to internal. These are examples of stuff I've used. Now, I've used multiple different things. Outlook, you're running out of space. Click here to free up space or look up where your files are. I've used Office invites for meeting, WebEx invites. Dating websites, really, really popular. If I send that on a test I'm on, I get credentials very, very quickly. Retail, I get creds that way, very, very popular. Depends on who you're targeting, but these work really well. Now, what a lot of you are thinking is, if you see there, the only way, there's no attachments with these. The only way that someone's going to be exploited is if they actually click for more information. So if you click, what happens? Sort of ruined it. Oh, no, you can't see it on the board. How do I move my video to the board? Yep. Drag it to there. Oh, there we go. Woohoo. It's very slick. Right, how the hell do I press play on this? Right, here we go. I'm going to have to do it quickly, and you can see the response. Right, here I've got Responder going. If they click on it, bang, we get a username, we get a domain name, we get a password hash. Now, you get an error. The error happens after we've got the hash. Now, I'm not going to discuss fixing it just yet. It will come up in my talk. Okay, so can we crack the hash? A lot of people, it was discussed in the very first talk earlier with the Raspberry Pi, which I thought was really good. Yes, we can crack the hash. Ages ago, we released a password dictionary that took RockU, and it looked at all the passwords that people generally use from penetration tests that we've done. And there's a lot of common things. If you have Microsoft complexity enforced, they're going to put an uppercase, because you have to have an uppercase, and most people put the uppercase as the first letter on their password. Now, I know some of you here will say, I never do that, but the majority of people do. When you enforce a special character, they will also put an exclamation mark on the end or an @ symbol for an A. Basically, we took the concept of rules and compiled RockU over and over and over again, doing all these versions that rules would do, but also added football teams, cities, names, all the stuff that rules doesn't do. And you end up with a dictionary that's quite quick. It's a lot quicker than using rules. Now, I don't want to bore you too much about it, but that date there was from a test I was on. I gained 8 hashes remotely doing UNC, and I used CrackStation and HashKiller and the top 1,000 and all these other dictionaries that have been released. And I like to test them against Rocktastic. They got nothing. And then I used them with rules, and they got nothing out of the 8. Now, it's not congratulations, you got 1 out of 8, because that's a really low score in my mind. but it did manage to reverse one, which I was quite chuffed about, which is why I've included it here. And then why not rules? Rules, there you go, they don't add stuff. They're very, very slow. If you use Hashcat with a big dictionary and rules and you've got a rubbish laptop, you don't have like multiple graphics cards, it is just really, really slow. If anyone's interested in the dictionary, you can grab it from our lab's website. Right, another example of UNC. This is going to be marginally painful, isn't it? Oh, here we go. That's good. Right, I have Responder going. Just from viewing the website, we've managed to steal creds. And the reason why this has happened, if you look at the source code, which you won't be able to see at the back, so I'm going to zoom in and let you see it in a minute. What we have in the source code, which we've added, that's a cloned website, by the way, it's worth mentioning. If you zoom in, there you go. It's an SMB request in the source code. Now, IE will look at an SMB request known as UNC exploitation. It will look at it in a website and go, oh, that's fair enough. Have my username, have my domain name, and have my password hash. I was shown this a couple of years back, and I've been using it ever since. And even today, it just blows me away that it works. It works really, really well. Okay. I talk a lot about UNC, so I thought for this talk, let's do something a bit different, just for a short period. Recently, has anyone heard of Windows 10s? Is anyone impressed by Windows 10s? It's got some good functions. It's a very stripped down version of Windows. It's very streamlined. It's supposed to be a lot more secure. It's supposed to be a lot quicker. I was reading it, and I was very, very interested. And then I got down to the bit about the browsers it comes with. And it says it comes with Edge. As you'd expect, they're going to sell it with their own browser. But it had this bit. It's more secure than Chrome and Firefox. And it had a number little 1 next to it. And I thought, oh, well, here we go. What's this? So I'm reading it, and it takes you to this, NSS Labs reports. So I downloaded the report, as any of you can do. That's the address if you want to download it. And they conduct independent global tests measuring how effective browsers are at protecting against socially engineered malware and phishing attacks. Well, I thought, I do a lot of phishing attacks. This is fair game. It's what I do. I'm interested to see. So, as I said, downloaded the report. I read through the report, and I got 78,921 examples, and they cut that down to 991. They don't explain really the reason why they cut it down to 991. I'd like to have known, but they don't. And they basically conclude 10 pages of stuff and more stuff and more stuff, and pretty pie charts. Less means better. And they concluded that Edge is the best at blocking phishing sites, and it's the quickest. The quickest bit, I have seen. Anyone does a lot of sort of phishing or social engineering tests, they'll see you register a domain, and sometimes within half an hour, sometimes even less, your domain gets blocked. It does happen. I tend to find that Chrome does it quicker from experience, but that's just my own opinion. But they say officially, Edge is the best. So I thought I'd put it to the test. Playing. And there you go. I cloned the Microsoft website, as you do. You need something to lab with and to test with. And I dropped a UNC request into it. Remember, this is the best browser at defending against phishing attacks. UNC is fair game at a phishing attack. I use it all the time. So I refreshed the page. Oh, I'm getting hashes instantly. Chrome and Firefox aren't vulnerable to that. I'm not here to pro a browser, but they won't natively support Microsoft functionality in their browsers. I personally think that's quite devastating. Are there any questions from that, by the way, as we go along? Right, so we've got creds. What now? This bit I love on tests. I love getting creds. We'll talk about shells later, but I like getting creds. I like working off low, and I start low and work my way up. SSL VPN, Citrix environments, Office 365, Outlook. They're all very capable to not be protected with two-factor authentication. I find regularly that they're not on tests, which is lethal, because the minute you get domain credentials using SSL VPN, you've got a direct connection to their internal network. You can just start an internal test. And it typically takes from sending an email 5 minutes until you're on their internal network. And then from that, it typically takes 30 to 40 minutes until you DA. I'll get onto that later, though. Citrix is always good as well. Citrix is kind of like a breakout test once you get onto a Citrix box, because they're often kind of restricted. But again, there's things like curb roasting, which I'll get onto later. You can become domain admin again very rapidly. Office 365. These two at the bottom obviously won't give you remote access into their internal organization, but Outlook's just a great one for quickly doing searches for passwords and other things. People always store them in emails. VPN information, sometimes you can find a little bit more in there that can help you. Office 365 gives you access to all their documents. MyDrive will store to their cloud, and you can look through it once you've got access. Now, this is something we've been doing on tests for a long time, but I read this recently. This was from Wikipedia, by the way, if anyone's interested. It's about APT28, or app28. They will send emails with malicious links to people. The person goes to the website that looks legit, the cloned website. They input their credentials. I don't know how they do it, I think it's just credential harvest from what I've seen. I don't think they're using UNC. They then use the credentials to access. So 5 and 6, that interested me. I just automatically thought that a nation state would be going straight in with the 0 days and kind of, I don't know, sort of malware of some kind. But theoretically, they're not. Okay, credit where credit is due. Office 365, recently I was on a test, and the minute I put the creds in, I thought, here we go. It instantly alerted me to this pop-up saying it was sending a phone call to the user with a two-factor authentication PIN. I thought that was very clever. I thought it's instantly, now they had configured it to do that, but it's one of the things that Office 365 does offer as an additional service for two-factor authentication. So once you log in, it will text the person immediately or email them with a PIN, or it will phone them. And from a remote perspective, you try not to sort of be spotted by anyone, knowing that you've just sent them a telephone call. That's pretty good. And also, I'm not 100% sure you can easily clone that and steal those creds. Right, now we're back onto shells. So if UNC fails and you need a shell. Okay, I've always said, forget 0 days. Functionality, functionality, functionality. Functionality is always fun to exploit. It's never going to get blocked. Unlikely it's going to get blocked. And 0 days cost loads of money. And they're often not weaponized, and they're often not stable. Well, what's just happened over the last couple of months? They're free. Suddenly we're getting them all free. People aren't paying for them. They're being released. And they're pretty incredible. So I've backtracked on that now, and so let's not forget about them, and let's take a look at them. So for people who don't know, who don't read newspapers, don't use the internet, which I know no one here, but quick story. The NSA owned loads of cool toys. Shadow brokers illegally took those toys. They tried to sell them. No one paid for them. Shadow brokers released them for free on the 14th of April 2017. They released a few of them. That's what followed. That's the level of danger that we all saw following the release of these. Okay, I'm being a bit nasty here, but the moral of the story is, don't leave SMB port 445 open from the outside. MSO8 67 used to target this. So we're talking back to 2008. Before 2008, people were attacking SMB from the outside. How is this still open on firewalls? Because that's how WannaCry apparently worked. People have been looking to see, was it emailed in? And the theory is, no, it was via a worm attacking port 445. I have no idea how any of these people who got compromised have still got port 445 open. Okay, before Eternal Blue, though, people were raving about this. People very, very quickly forgotten this. It was really like, at work, it was a buzz when this came out. Everyone was talking about it. Can we use it? Is it good? Is it stable? Right, what is it? It's an exploit. When you do a macro, you get a macro warning. Or if you do other things like OLEs, you get a warning when you're about to run it. CV 2007-0199, catchy, does this automatically upon opening it, opening an attachment. You open a Word document, it automatically triggers. Now, to date, there are some, if you're in protected mode, it will still put you into protected mode and ask you to click to come out of protected mode, but it doesn't ask you to run a macro. It doesn't warn you about anything, and this is why it's new. And the person who discovered this exploit, it's actually functionality he's exploiting. It's legitimate functionality that no one's figured about exploiting yet, which makes it, again, very, very interesting. But this is the main thing why we all got excited. You no longer got the macro warnings. So in theory, if they copied it from the email directly to their desktop and opened it, well, I've kind of told you what it does, but let's have a look. There you go, there's a victim machine. I've got Callie here. I'm opening the Word document, bang, you get the error, you got a session. So it's pretty devastating. I take it here a lot of people use Meterpreter or Metasploit, but if you don't, it gives us a remote access to their machine. So what's happened was, by opening that Word document, they have made a reverse connection back to us, and using Metasploit's framework, we can control that machine remotely. The problem is, with 0 days, they make headlines, they're big news, and AV signatures instantly come out. Now, what I noticed with that, there is some little tricks you can do to already bypass AV with it. Initially, you could just use it, and then it got picked up quite quickly. And there's some little tricks you can do, which work, but they only work at the moment, and they're going to get caught, and they're going to get caught, and they're going to get caught, which is why I always think it's good to go back to functionality. Now, arguably, is macro and OLEs a functionality? They are. They exploit functionalities. Can everyone see the videos okay? I'll try and make them as big as I can, but they're not always easy to see. So let's look at macros first. So back on the victim's machine, you open a Word document, there you go, get the warning, get rid of that, get the warning, and eventually a PowerShell session goes back and says, give me a session, bang, you got remote access to that machine. You don't obviously send people a blank document. I will get to that in a minute. But now let's have a look at OLEs. So the difference between an OLE, I'd like to pause it here. OLE is an embedded object. It's functionality Microsoft allow. They allow you to an object, there you go, you hit run, that was the warning you get. And again, we get a reverse shell. Now, what you would normally do is you'd send an email from someone and you would put reasons why you've got Word attachments in there. You can have any image you like. But for some reason, a lot of the people out there who are using these, real people who are using these on it, to exploit people, they seem to be putting Excel spreadsheets in. Here's your, I don't know, financial information. Here's so-and-so. Here's the internal contacts list. So on tests, we like to replicate that. Okay, final point before I go all internal. One Word document can contain all of them. I call this like heavy weaponization. Now, it looks ugly as hell, but you can have a macro, you can have an OLE in there, you can have a UNC in there. Now, how do you get people to open them, how do you trick them into doing it? You start telling them, oops, something's gone wrong. Now, all these things that we use on tests, this is what the real world's using, and we just screenshot it and just add it to ours. That's literally just a JPEG on top. There's nothing technical here. Originally, we all looked at ways of sort of, I can't say the word, blurring out the text. I won't say obfuscate because I can't say it. Blurring out text. We looked at ways to blur out text. But there's no point. Why waste half a day or a day writing something clever? Just use a JPEG. That's what the criminals do. So, and here you go. This is one of my favorites. Recruiters, recruiters, recruiters. How many in this room are recruiters? I'm staying quiet. We all, not just me, we all get emails all the time, LinkedIn, invites, phone calls, emails saying, why didn't you take my call? Occasionally, you might get annoyed by one. You think, that's nice, I like that template, I'm going to use it. So there at the bottom is an OLE. And this is when it kind of looks more believable. You might have 4 or 5 of them, maybe 10 of them. And you'd say, this job reference, click here. For this job reference, click here. People will click on them, and they will press run, and you will get remote access. It does work. And then they stop working. We were using these for about 2 or 3 years. I'm using them really well. I'm really happy. We were like, woohoo, we're the best. And then they literally just stopped working. I kept banging my head against the wall, and I got fed up about it. I really got quite depressed about it. It's really bad. I should be happy. Finally, people are fixing things. The all-new singing and dancing, spam, virus blockers, dedicated anti-spam, antivirus, anti-phishing, security appliances, the unified threat management systems, the phishing proxies and stuff, email security devices, they're good. They're good. They're working well. They see macro, or they see any kind of macro in a Word document, they block it. If they see an OLE, that's a good one. I'm surprised they block OLEs. They block them. They don't block UNC. That's worth noting. UNC is just legitimate functionality. They're never going to block that. But they're very good at blocking shells. And I was getting beat up about it. I started talking to some of my colleagues, and I spoke to one of my friends. And Mr. Hagen23, I'm not sure if you can see him, follow him on Twitter. He's a very smart guy. I talk to him a lot. He said, Neil, stop messing around. Make them come to you. I was like, what? Make them come to me? I have to turn that off. Oh, I can't. No, can't stop it. Okay, and I was like, what do you mean make them come to me? And he goes, I've got like a Dropbox clone. It's not Dropbox, it's a clone I created myself. And I send them a normal email, just a link, saying, we've implemented some changes, blah, blah, blah. Can you check it's working? Click here to download your file. And they'll go in themselves and get it. And it bypasses all your email filters because the actual payload that's in the Word document, they've downloaded themselves. It's genius, absolute genius. So he said you can have a copy of it. And I wanted to show everyone here it because it is genius, but I don't want you to see what I actually use. So I've made a mock-up of it. So here we go. SharePoint online doesn't even exist. Users log in. Of course, that's a credential harvester. And it's also got UNC in the background. So all your domain admins who take a look. Anyway, click here. I'll get back to that in a minute. Click here, and there you go. So that bypasses all your email security filters and proxies. Pretty scary. The UNC thing, a lot of the time when you're doing a test, or I would imagine happens in the real world, if someone reports a suspect email, which you do get on every single test, it will be alerted very, very rapidly normally. What you find is the IT team will look at it, and they'll be interested. Well, we're safe to just look at it, right? Nothing can happen just from looking at a website. So, of course, they'll look at it, and we've got UNC embedded in it, SMB request, and we'll snag their creds just from looking at it. So even if they don't put their creds in, even if they don't continue and download the file, we've still got a good chance of getting creds from it. But if we get creds and hashes, and we also get them to download it and we've got a shell, well, winning. Right, so now we're on to rocking internals with new tricks. Right, I get asked a lot, have I seen Bloodhound? And the last couple of days, people have said, have you seen DefStar? Now, yes, and yes. DefStar is very, very cool. What Bloodhound will do is it will go out and find where your domain admins are, and it will find you the quickest route to the domain admin. And it is definitely something that Blue Team should be using. Where people have done tests on sites where their team know what they're up to, and they're really, really savvy, they've been using Bloodhound, and colleagues aren't getting domain admin, and we get domain admin. So it's very, very good, and it works. DefStar automates it. I've only seen a couple of YouTube videos of it. I believe there's a talk about it coming up at a security conference. But it will automate it for you. You basically just right-click Go, and it will go off, and it will use Bloodhound. It will then look for a misconfiguration, which I'll get into in a minute, and it will use Mimikatz, where the domain admins are, and it will just return you the domain admin accounts. It's a bit of a right-click, next Go. It's very, very scary. It's obviously going to be, obviously someone was going to write it, and it's now happened. So people will start weaponizing this sort of thing. They will have this knowledge, and you'll start to see people using it. It looks very cool. Here we go. I've just discussed that. The GPP passwords was groups XML. I will get to later. Okay, that works. That will work unless people have done that update, or if they don't use a groups XML file. What groups XML files are, they're instructions on Windows that are used by group policy that contain an administrative account and the password hash. Now, if you use MS14-025, it doesn't stop the groups XML files that were already in there, but it stops you from ever adding any more following it. So you should still go back and manually delete your groups XML files that have that in. But secondly, if they're using Windows Server 2012 and onwards, it won't work because Mimikatz. So there is a bit of protection at the moment for people. I think it's right. Personally, I've pen tested for quite a few years now, and I think it's good to know a million ways to do things. If you have sort of like 2 or 3 tricks, you will get caught at some point. We're human, we miss things, but you don't want to miss things. You want to make sure you don't miss things, and you find as much as you possibly can on a test is what I think. And if you go in with 1 or 2 tricks, you might miss things, is what I'm saying. We're all still learning. I did the IP6 talk earlier today, and I thought, that's brilliant. That's something I want to really, really start focusing on every single test. Right, so the new tricks anyway, PowerShell. PowerShell, we all know, is incredible. I buried my head in the sand for ages and tried to ignore PowerShell and hoped it would go away. It's painful to use. It's very, very hard to learn to use. But the gifts it gives you are incredible. Here's a great one. Who's heard of curb roasting? Brilliant, brilliant. Curb roasting, brought to the world by Tim Meaden. Curb roasting. Basically, every user on a domain, so every standard user with a domain account has rights to ask the domain controller for a copy of its service accounts along with its correlating password hashes. Now, instantly, alarm bells should be going, what the hell? How can that be a thing? It is a thing. It's legitimate. It was quite complex to do. And then recently, I've started using this a lot, which is POSH-C2. And I learned that basically PowerShell isn't quite as hard to use anymore. This has helped teach me about PowerShell. And I'm sort of dipping in and out of using native PowerShell, but also using a framework. It's a framework a lot like Metasploit. But really, to do Kerberos now, you literally just run that one command, and it'll seconds later pipe out all the user accounts and the correlating password hashes. Now, the more interesting thing about Kerberosing, or should I say service account passwords, is they are not set by, they're often set years and years and years ago, because the last thing you want to do is keep changing your service accounts. So they're often set well before you introduce complexity to your domain, and they're often very, very weak passwords, and they're not set to change, and they're quite often in the domain admins group. So to give you an idea, if you start thinking Rocktastic, which I do use against them, but if you start thinking that level of passwords, you're probably not going to get it. Start thinking more like password, one word, lowercase. That's the level of the domain admin accounts often in these service groups, or the service group accounts in the domain admin group. Right, so the quick and easy win. Email a macro in. POSH-C2 makes the macro for you, so it's really easy. You literally just go, blah, 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 blah. Right, got my macro, let's email it in. Select your implant. That means it's remoted back to you. So the machine they've opened the macro and they've connected back to you. Do the Kerberos. Get hashes, Hashcat, Rocktastic, DA. But like I said, you don't need to use DA for that, Rocktastic for that. You can use any old dictionary. What is Kerberos? Why is this a thing? Right, it provides secure user authentication with an industry standard intercompatibility. That's a lot of words. Basically, it's dead old. It was introduced in Windows 2002K, and it's still used today for compatibility reasons, and it is good. It's a good way of securing users. Right, groups XML. This is the other quick route. Right, I kind of sort of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but groups XML. Again, any user has the rights to do this. So any domain user here, if you're standard accounts, what you do is you get an SMB share to the domain controller, and you just go to the policies directory, and then you go up to the search bar at the top, is what I do, and do groups.xml, just do .xml in the search box and just wait for them to come. Metasploit has a post-module script. Posh has a post-module, well, they call it post-module script, but they have a script for it, and I'm sure Empire has, I'm sure they all have. Dead easy to find, anyone can do it. Now, groups XML was it a good idea? It was an idea. And it was really, really good until Microsoft published the AES encryption key. Now, yeah, it's something someone said, geez, then. You can't encrypt something with AES and then publish the key and then wonder what the hell's going on. Right, so there's the key. That's what was published. So, of course, seconds later, I would imagine, some real smart pen tester thought, I can exploit that. And then they did. And this is using Metasploit's script, PostScript, actually. I use it, but you can run it yourself. Just runs in Ruby, and I'm going to walk about a bit here. No one can hear me on this microphone, can they? You can see that, username, and there's the hash. Protected with AES, which is great, but they released the key. So all you do is you run this one command, and there you go. Let's get hacking with spaces and exclamation mark on the end. It takes about a minute to run. It's one of those ones that's actually quite slow. Always surprises me how slow it is. I always think it's not going to work. It's ridiculous. It works every single time. It's going to work every time. They've got the key. But yeah, it takes a bit of time, but it works. So any standard user could do this on your domain now. OK, if all of this PowerShell stuff fails, I still like to grab a Meterpreter shell. And that's how I do it from Posh. Quick, easy command, copy and paste it in. All you have to do is change your IP address if you're a listener, and bang, you get yourself a Meterpreter shell. Right. The filthy way to get in domain admin. I'm kind of ashamed that I'm saying this, but I think someone has to say it. Right, ipconfig all finds you the DC. What it does, it finds you the DNS servers. DNS servers are very, very typically, I was corrected in my last talk, they don't have to be the DC in a Windows domain, but very typically, the DNS servers are the DC. So ipconfig/all will find you the DC in my mind. Well, it's worked for me every single time. There are scripts for it, and you can overcomplicate it if you want. MS1710 to the DC. I'm ashamed to say this. Right, if it's a 2008 box, it'll work. Congratulations, you've won. Bang, 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 done, DA, go home. Right, Hackerman. Basically, I'm saying it's a bit scripty. It's a bit, yeah, it's not very skilled, is it? There you go. This is MS17010. I don't want to take away the brilliance of the exploit, But what I want to take away from it is the use of it. Oh, crap. That's really bad timing. Can I just reboot it? I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, MS-17 kills things. That's the point. It kills things. Everyone stay quiet about this on Twitter. I've been watching. Twitter's been exploding about it. This is fantastic. We've got MS-08 again. We can pwn everything. I've labbed with it at home, and it kills things. I know people have told me who've said, I've used it. It kills things. You see a lot of that on your job. Clients don't like that. I learned years and years and years ago, try your hardest not to ever reboot a box. Clients don't like it. Right, so my advice is you can't ignore something that's out there. If you're not doing very well on a test and you've tried absolutely everything else, then I might be tempted to hit it up on a single individual user's box. Try that way, but I wouldn't go straight to a domain controller and do it. Right, so old school way to DA. I'm showing my age now. Non-PowerShell way. Okay, so you've got creds. Right, we're cooking. Nope, good luck. I'm not the world's best at Privesc, but I'll get to that in a minute. Right, so when I've got creds, my first go-to tool obviously is Metasploit. I like the SMB login. Very, very easy to lock everyone out with this tool. You learn painfully from using it. But here, I've set the username. I set the pass. Very, very complex password. Oh, look at that. 0, who would have thought of that? And threads, come on. Oh, remote hosts. I always do these videos thinking they're a good idea. And I regret them when I'm live. They take so long. Come on. Run. Here we go. What we're looking for is any account with local admin rights. There we go, administrator. Lights up green like a Christmas tree, makes me happy. So, domain user account has got local admin rights on that box. Okay, as I've just said, local system rights. Right, why does this happen? And I'll get to why that's useful in a minute. Basically, misconfigured services shares on local machines, really, really common. I can't think of many tests I've done where I don't find this. There's normally 1 or 2 users with local admin rights on the box. I don't know, there'll be a reason. Support will say there's a reason for it. I came from a support background, and a lot of things you do because you're firefighting, you have to. It's a very, very hard job, and we should respect them. I've been there, I've done it, I know why. It's very, very hard to think, okay, now how do I secure everything? You're trying to keep everything alive. You're trying to keep it working. We're very quick to judge, but it is a really, really hard job. Right. Once you've got local admin rights, I will then fire up. I'll give that big speech, but I'm still happy to keep poning. Pierce exec time. Pierce exec gives you access to the machine. If you've got local admin rights on the box and you spotted that for SMB login, you now know that you can Pierce exec to it. Very, very commonly, you can Pierce exec to it anyway. Normally, if you run that with a single user, domain user, not a domain admin, I'm talking single standard user account here, you normally find not 1 box, but maybe 4 or 5 boxes that have got local admin rights. So the next thing you want to do is try and get onto those boxes. So here I am, I'm trying to get access to it. Now, Pierce exec used to use, obviously, a real payload, which it would drop to disk, and antivirus would pick it up. So people used to use, I used to use Shelter and Veil to get around that. Now, it now uses PowerShell. So nothing drops to disk at all. Well, its first choice is to use PowerShell. It then preferences a payload if that doesn't work. So nothing drops to disk. We've got local hashes there. I'll get to that in a minute. It doesn't drop to disk. It doesn't trigger AV. So none of this will get stopped by AV up to this point. Right, so when you try and do get system, a minute ago on the video, some of you might have spotted, I did get system, I did hash dump. I want them local hashes, and I'll explain that in a minute. But quite often, obviously, it doesn't work. And this is the bit when I start to cry, I get upset. It's not going to be an easy test. Not going to be DA in 30 minutes. It's going to take a little bit longer. Let's start doing a bit of skill here. Privesc is an art form that I am learning. It is very hard. There's a few easy hits, a few missing patches that you can look for. But often in Metasploit, those payloads will instantly get picked up by AV. PowerUp is very, very good. Back to PowerShell at that point, but PowerUp is very, very good at spotting misconfigured services and things ran as a local system that shouldn't be ran as a local system that you can start and stop and add your payload to and then restart it. But it is real skill. But let's say I've gone through all those and I've achieved it. I'm not having a video on this. Let's say you've achieved it, and we've got the golden, what I call the golden hashes, the local administrator accounts. Now, I'll try all of them, by the way. I'll go back to SMB, log in, and I'll spray them out against the /24, against the network, and I'll see what they can log into, where before you might have got into 2 or 3 boxes, you can now probably get into about 30 or 40, 300, 600, 1,000 more boxes. And at that point, your opportunity to become domain admin is massively increased. Right, update 101. So remote access. Remote access was achieved very easily by stealing credentials and using an SSL VPN, or alternatively, by using a macro. And we've got access to the internal network, and we're now local administrator. Right, time to hunt out users of interest. Now, if you're a nation state, you probably wouldn't instantly be thinking domain admin. You'd probably be thinking that person we're targeting. So they might go hunting out a single individual. On a test, personally, I will go for, to start with, domain admin, because then I can then go and hunt out everyone else really easily. But I like to get this to start with. It's regarded as the keys to the castle, highest privileges on a single domain. It's not enterprise admin, so if they've got multiple domains, you need enterprise admin. But it gives you access to all domain resources. Right, rule 1 of DA Club. Nessus, Qualys, and OpenVAS probably aren't going to help you. I'm not knocking them, and I use Nessus personally, very, very good vulnerability scanner. But if you want to be pen testing and you want to be, get domain admin, it's not going to find it. You might find, sorry, you scratched your head, I thought it was a question. No, it's not going to find you domain admin. You have to find it. Now, using the local admin hashes, pass the hash is still very relevant. People say it's fixed. It doesn't work anymore. It does still work. It works fine. Microsoft do not salt. The reason why it works, Microsoft don't salt passwords natively. They can't. It breaks things, and that's why they don't do it. We're very quick to joke about it, but I think Linux isn't in a domain environment. Maybe if it was used as much in a domain environment, they might have some problems as well. But they can't do it. So what happens is, engineer comes along, builds that machine, and then these machines get cloned off it. And it gets cloned over and over again. And because it doesn't salt the password, the local passwords that are on that machine are the same on that machine, that machine, that machine, that machine, that machine, and that machine. And the dangers are Microsoft accepts the password hash natively. You don't have to have a username and password. You don't have to crack that. You can just use the password hash. I always think that's quite amazing that you can do that. I think it probably accepts the hash preferenced over the actual clear text password. It's ironic. Criminals are starting to catch up. 2016, reports of ransomware starting to use pass-the-hash techniques. I haven't been able to see any research of what they're using it for. I don't know what they're doing it for, but it's pretty dangerous. There was no reports of WannaCry using it. Think of the dangers if WannaCry used that. Yes, they got very far. Think about how much further they could have got. They could have taken over 80% of the internal machines. It would have been devastating. Anyway, that was possibly a mistake on their side not to use it. Weaponized variants of that have started to come out, and they're getting better and better and better. So anyone who doesn't patch here, just patch. So how can a pen tester use pass the hash? I use this. I told you I'm quite old school with my techniques. SMB exec is fantastic. Once you've got the hash of the local admin that you know is working, this will go out to all of the /24, how many subnets you've defined, and it will try and log in, and it will just look for domain admin for you. It does what Bloodhound does. Bloodhound will do exactly the same thing at this point. And this is what I call DADA, come out and play. Typically, you find a lot of domain admins. People use it a lot, varying numbers. Let's say a company's got, I don't know, 30 or 40 people in their IT team, or 20 to 30 people in their IT team. You'll probably find 6 that are running things as domain admin. I'll talk about that in a minute. When should a domain admin account be used? I'll throw it out to the audience. Does anyone feel like talking? When do you think a domain admin account should be used? My friend who told me the answer to this is sitting in the audience, actually. He's a very smart person. It's a correct answer. OK, I won't be mean. The domain admin account should be used when you're setting up a domain and when it hits the fan. And there's probably some system engineers now who freaked and said, that's wrong, that's just incorrect. I've had a lot of people fight me over this and say, that's wrong, just use it all the time. I find people using it while they're surfing the internet. They'll elevate their rights, exactly. They'll elevate their rights with IE, of all things, that is vulnerable to UNC exploitation, with the domain admin account, and sit there reading the Daily Mail. It's just no. It's not, okay, it's not directly our job to say you can't do this, but it's not from a security point of view, it's not right. It should be used for setting up the domain and when it hits the fan. Now, password resets, installing software, delegation of permissions, thank you, I put the note in. A Microsoft released something called delegation of permissions. You can give people administrative accounts that have rights to certain things. They can do that, but they can't do this. That's the way to go. Right, so you found DA. How do you exploit it? The classic way was this, Mimikatz. Incredible, incredible. Has everyone here seen Mimikatz? But let's just say some people may not have. I'm going to show a video on Mimikatz. Definitely worth it going video. So 1 minute. That's interesting. I've got 120 slides still to go. Right, Mimikatz. So we got a session, and woohoo, no Privesk required. There you go. It's the PostScript for Mimikatz. And run it, and it pulls the password, the clear text domain password. There you go, yo, complex password, yo. The admin, very complex password. It pulls it out, clear text out of memory. If I've got 1 minute left, I just want to just get to this final slide. Oh, when my mouse stops working. OK, it doesn't play nicely on Windows 10 onwards. Server 2012 and 2016, you have to do a registry tweak, which requires rebooting the box. Again, clients don't like that. Criminals, they'll just do it. We can't do that. So what do? I used that recently, Metasploit, lockout keylogger. I used a keylogger with Metasploit years ago, and it triggered AV. This didn't trigger AV. What it does is it waits 130 seconds and locks the machine. The person thinks, oh, it's locked my machine, time to log back in. You get the creds, you snag them, it's as simple as that. That works on Windows 10. Posh obviously has got Cred Popper, which does the same kind of thing. Common password choices for DA. They're dreadful. Commonly, they're dreadful. Right, is that wrap-up time then? Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I wasn't joking. I always have extra material just in case. Right, that's my Twitter account if anyone wants to send me a question. Are there any questions out there, though? Feel free to drop me DM at any time or any public mock or question, and I will respond. Thank you very much.